Welcome to the GateDrop podcast. GateDrop.com, giving you the jump in motocross news.
Hello and welcome to the GateDrop.com MXGP 2022 preview podcast. And Andy, this is always the most exciting time of the season. Everyone fit and healthy, except for Jeffrey Herlings and maybe Reuben Fernandez. But other than that, everyone's excited, ready to go. New bikes, new teams for some, full of hope, and a brilliant track to open the series, Matterley Basin, one of the best of the year. Great viewing. All the riders seem to like it. It never really seems to favour one rider over the other. And right now, it's pretty exciting, except for the fact, of course, that number one on the entry list, Jeffrey Herlings, looks like he may not, or very likely won't be racing due to a broken heel. To saying that, of all things, a photo shoot and a pretty brutal crash that he's maybe lucky he wasn't even more badly hurt. But as exciting as this season is, it does take a wee bit away from the start of the year with Jeffrey Herlings, but it remains to be seen how many rounds he misses and if he could still be a title contender. And if the worst comes to the worst and he can't be a contender because he has to miss so many rounds, he could still become the winningest, to coin an American phrase, motocross rider of all time. I think he's 3 away from Stefan Everts and he's 1 away from Ricky Carmichael's 102 outdoors. If he gets those two, he could be the greatest ever in terms of race wins. So still something for Jeffrey Herlings to fight for this year.
Absolutely. Let's not dwell on him missing the first round too much because, I mean, he missed 2 rounds last year and it was the most exciting in the history of the sport. So let's put a positive spin on it. Hopefully he'll only miss a few rounds and the normal service resume when he makes his comeback. But yeah, I can't wait for this. I'm like a kid at Christmas in the week on the build up to MXGP first round. Who's going to surprise? Who's done their homework? Everyone goes there feeling great, of course, but then one bad session and then it's panic stations. So it's going to be exciting. Can't wait to get over to Mallory and just see how it all goes for both the MXGP and the MX2 World Championship. It's going to be great.
Yeah, the first round when you get there and you walk around the pits and look at the new bikes and speak to different people and everybody's so positive and happy on that Friday and Saturday morning, and sometimes it stays that way by Sunday night, but sometimes it doesn't, depending on how things go. But spoken briefly about Jeffrey Herlings, he's somewhat of a wait and see how things go. We don't really know. All we do know is that he's unbelievably fast, proved himself to be the fastest man on the planet last year, and it's pretty much about how quickly he can come back and how fit he is whenever he does come back. Will he have the speed to go straight and win races as to whether he can still be a title contender? Someone who is expected back but might not be fully healthy is Reuben Fernandez. It's somewhat ironic that the 2 guys that were level on points going into the last moto of a phenomenal last of season in 2021 are both on the couch injured at the minute, which is pretty disappointing. But Reuben Fernandez might end up racing at Matterley, although it's unlikely he's going to be at his best because I'm not even sure he's back on the bike yet. But we might see Reuben Fernandez at round 1, but we're not quite sure how long it's going to take him to get back up to the speed he had last year. So he's a bit of a question mark. But with Reuben Fernandez, he's pretty tough and he loves the hard pack. So if he does ride there, Matterley at least should suit him pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very unlikely he's going to be riding Matterley. He's not even back on the bike yet. And I think Ben Watson did state in an article that he's likely to be the only factory KRT rider at Matterley. So probably unlikely to see forever there. But you never know. If he gets one day on the bike and he feels reasonably comfortable, he might give it a shot. I think he needs to ride it more than Herlings does, put it like that.
Yeah.
But there's no point doing it if you're just going to ride, if you're even going to struggle to last the 30 minutes plus 2. But
well, no, if you're going to put yourself at risk as well,
exactly.
It's long term be actually worse than just missing round. But
exactly. So it will be interesting. But yeah, like you said, he's a tough cookie, and hopefully he can come back as soon as possible and run at the front where he belongs.
It has to be really disappointing for both of those riders because Herlings was coming in with all the momentum off his championship win. Looked like he was going to be an unbelievable, back to maybe the sort of prime level, which is maybe 2018 Jeffrey Herlings. Reuben Fernandez, we saw him in Paris before that crash. He was absolutely flying at the Supercross. He probably had a bit of revenge on his mind coming into this season. So for both to be possibly missing the first round, we don't know how many after that, has to be pretty much annoying. Every day they wake up knowing that the season that they were hoping for to rebound or to continue the momentum from 2021 is they've already got a couple of hurdles they're going to have to jump through to try and win this championship. So not ideal at all for the top two from last year.
Absolutely. Although one thing I would say is, even though it was very disappointing for Hurlings to get injured, at least he's done a lot of his testing with the new bike. Obviously Factory Kawasaki, Ice One have took that over now, and I think Fevre could have benefited from an off season, getting to know the new team, new bike settings and things like that. Have they got last year's data, so it will be interesting. But yeah, Fevre missing an off season could be quite costly, but at the end of the day, it's Romain Fevre, and he's a very, very good rider, so I don't think it'll take him too long before he's riding at the front again.
And for me, that leaves, in theory, Jorge Prado and obviously Tim Geiser as maybe the two favourites. The Yamaha boys might not like that, but maybe given a couple of percent to those two. Prado's only had one pre-season race so far. We saw that at Raiola. He kept Geiser pretty honest, but Geiser was very, very impressive. And both have mentioned how motivated they are for 2022. Both look like they have the starts wired. Tim Geiser beat Jorge Prado at Raiola both times out of the gate. Prado, of course, wasn't far away and came out second. That could be the early championship battle for me. And those two probably won't want to give Jeffrey Hurlings or Romain Fevre any hope coming in.
Absolutely. I think you're right. Going into the season, those two are coming in as the title favourites. But, there's 19 or 20, I'm not sure if there's 20 or 19 rounds of MXGP penciled in this year off the top of my head, but we all know how hard it is to stay healthy for the whole season. So actually, in a way, for Hurlings and Fevre, if it might not be that bad that both those are out at the same time. Even Geiser, he picked up a collarbone injury last year. Prado got injured last year, a couple of injuries here or there, and it's wide open for anybody really. So even though they're the favourites at the start of the season, I'm not sure if you can still really say that they're championship favourites because they're always one injury away from opening the door. So going to be interesting in terms of the actual championship chase. But at the start of the season, like you say, I think Geiser and Prado will be right at the front, and I think both will be very, very motivated to beat each other first and foremost, but also put a marker down to the rest of the field and Fevre and Hurlings who will be watching at home.
Jorge Prado, for me, has the most improvement left within him from the previous two seasons. Tim Geiser always also seems to find a bit of improvement every year, but you wonder how much faster a Tim Geiser can get because he's so fast and consistent and he knows the drill. He's won championships. He's probably close to the peak of his speed and having everything together. With Jorge Prado, his debut season, he came in injured with a broken leg and then the broken collarbone. Ended it with COVID. Started last year with ongoing effects of COVID. He clearly didn't have the fitness that he wanted in the last 5 or 10 minutes of a race. Then he got himself back right into the championship. Then he had that collision with Hurlings, another minor injury, and then he hurt his back at the end of the year as well. So Prado hasn't had a full season. He probably hasn't had a proper full winter's preparation ever in the 450 class. And just seeing him at Raiola, he looks very, very confident. We're going to hopefully, fingers crossed, by the time we get to Matterley Basin, nothing will have went wrong. But it looks like we're finally going to get to see Jorge Prado with a full winter under his belt. He obviously has experience on the bike as well. He's the lead man for Claudio De Carli. He's a lead man for Gas globally for me. Everything's on Jorge Prado to win, and I think he's going to take the biggest step up this year, and he's all out for this championship, and he could be pretty impressive to me.
Absolutely. I think the thing that I love about Prado is just the way that he rides a bike. I mean, Raiola was so rough and bumpy, but he looked like he was on a Sunday stroll, literally. The day was also Sunday. But yeah, he just looked like he was just out casually, just doing laps, just like a training day. Really good the way he uses the bike, just to hop over the bumps here or there as if there are no bumps. But really, really good to watch. And I think it's a style is why he's still got a lot of room to grow. Like if he's riding that well without even looking like he's trying, it's scary the prospect he has. Plus, also he's still very, very young, so he's naturally should get better the more experience he got. I think the biggest thing for Prado is I think he's under more pressure this year than he has done in the past.
It's his year to step up and lead, isn't it?
Yeah, and plus he's the main man now. There was talk about him and Crowley last year. Prado maybe wasn't happy because he wasn't getting the bike settings that maybe he wanted. That's the sort of talk around that. He's going to get everything he wants this year, so he's got no excuses. And also Crowley isn't there, so he's the main man now, and they're going to be expecting him to at least challenge for this championship. So it's going to be interesting to see if A, can handle the pressure, which I think he will, and B, how many races he can win, and will he actually challenge for this title? It's going to be fascinating to watch.
And this time he doesn't have Crowley as a rival, he has Crowley as a help. So each different situation, Crowley, even just a word or two here and there could help Prado. We know he's mentally strong, we know he's already confident, but even when you're as good and talented and he's already a world champion himself, of course, Prado, just to get extra wee tips and hints from a guy like Crowley. Crowley, of course, understands exactly how Prado rides, so that could help Prado as well, having those battles, because Crowley understands maybe the mindset really intently. He's everything in his corner this year for me, for Jorge Prado to go. He has the 2 years of experience. He's coming in healthy. We've also got Jeffrey Herlings, as we just mentioned, Reuben Fernandez, not quite there yet at the start of the year. This is his time for me to really go to the next level and take this title down to the last round. But Tim Geiger has been there and done it in the 450 class. It looks like he's got the starts wired. So that's going to be pretty intriguing for me at the start of this year. Prado's just got beat twice in a row by Tim Geiger. Will it happen at Matterley Basin? Will it happen at Mantova in these early rounds? Definitely something to keep an eye on as well. But Tim Geiger, I don't think you can ever count him out, whether Jeffrey Herlings is fit or injured. I think Geiger's the guy you're going to have to beat to try and win a championship generally.
Yeah, what I would say about Geiger is he tends to start the seasons typically very fast.
He does, yeah.
I mean, last year he was phenomenal at the start of that season. You were
so
thinking,
good,
wow,
yeah.
so good.
Russia,
and then he went
comeback.
Yeah, and then he went through a bit of a dip, if you can call it that. But he went quite a while without winning a moto, and so I'm expecting the same this year in terms of how he starts the season. But the question is if he's going to maintain that level the whole way throughout the season. That's going to, because I think that's maybe what he didn't do last year. I think he started very well, and I think he ended pretty well, bar that first corner in Mantova, which really that blew him of the championship, really, because I think he was still in contention until that happened. But then that was the championship out the window then. But it'll be interesting to see if he can keep that level throughout the whole 20 rounds of MXGP, which is very, very difficult to do, by the way.
Yeah, I think he has the experience. What'll maybe be interesting is Tim always seems to want to show he can beat Jeffrey Herling straight up in a raw speed race, because something he hasn't been able to do is beat Jeffrey Herlings over a full season when Jeffrey's been healthy. And I think last year he really wanted to show he could do that. Coming in this year when Jeffrey does get back, and you presume he will win races at some point, does Tim play it, I'll just let Jeffrey win this because the challenge is more important, or will he get maybe sidetracked and want to show a wee bit like Renault did last year, but it worked for him against Tom Vialle, that I'm the fastest guy in the world and I'm going to prove it and I'm going to win this championship and leave no one in any doubt that I'm the fastest rider in the world as well. Those sort of things will interest me. I think Jorge Prado, he's always pretty smart, and that stuff like that doesn't really come into his head sometimes. I don't think he's quite happy to take a second or third and play the long game. But I think for Prado, again, especially at the start of this year, it's about GP wins and race wins to really get this championship going in the right direction. He's won here and there, but because of the health and the winters he's had, he's never come into the season in top form. And I think this is where the both, to me, again, I've mentioned this before, but the both seem really, really motivated. And as you said, they're going to want to put a marker down at the start of this year, because moving on to the other competition, it's still not going to be easy. Jeremy Sear, finally healthy again. He could be the guy that steps up to those guys' level and really challenges. He's already consistent. Whether he's healthy, whether he's struggling with his health, he still puts in consistent rides. The end of last year, we saw his speed. He's at the front of both preseason races he's done so far this year. I don't think we can count Jeremy Sear out of this title.
No, I don't think we can count him out, because like you say, he's consistent and he always has been, and I don't think that's going to change. But the next challenge for Jeremy Sear is to become a regular race winner. I think that's what he needs to do to really challenge for an MXGP title, because if he can do that, if he can regularly win races, he's got, if he's not on 100% and he's on 95%, that's still going to be good enough probably to get him on the podium, if not top 5. He had a lot of things go against him last year, and somehow he still ended up, I think, 4th in the championship. So definitely can't discount him out. I think he wrote on social media the other week he's having as much fun as he ever had on the bike, and like they say, a happy rider makes a fast rider. So definitely don't be surprised to see him challenging up there at Mallory Basin, round one.
And I always remember an article I read a good few years ago when he was just breaking into the top echelons of MX2. And it was about that he wasn't a Ken Roxon. He wasn't a rider that just came onto the scene at the very top. He was always going to build his way up, but if you give him time, he was going to get there.
A slow burner.
Yeah, and it looks like with his form at the end of last season, seems to be coming in. He's starting 2022 like that, at least in the preseason races. I still think he's getting better and better, but as you said, this next step might be the hardest step to take to be a relatively consistent race winner. And that's probably what he's going to have to do to be in contention for the championship. But I think everything else he's got is just, can he take this next step, as you say?
Exactly. And I don't think he's the best starter we've ever seen either. You know, he gets good starts, but he doesn't get too many hole shots, which is quite strange because he's very, very small. So you would think he would get more hole shots than he does get, but rarely does he ever get the hole shot. Although I suppose you can say that about anybody when Prado's behind the gate. But even when he wasn't really racing Prado, don't remember too many Jeremy Sear hole shots. So I think like Geiser, who identified his starts to be an improvement, I think that's maybe where Sear needs to improve as well, because it definitely makes life easier if you can get out in the top three every moto.
And sticking with Yamaha, they have a strong team this year. Glenn Kudenhoff probably didn't have the season he wanted last year. Again, he showed glimpses of when everything was right. He did have the pace. This year, another winter on the bike. He's a whole season of data with the team. They know what he likes and vice versa. Kudenhoff probably has a bit more pressure on him again to deliver, but for me, his performance seems to come from comfort and knowing the bike, and it looks like he's quite a precise rider when it comes to setup. And if they find that setup and he finds the comfort, I think he's going to be back on the form that we saw 2 years ago in the Stanley Construct KTM. But again, a wee bit like Jeremy Sear, yes, he can win races. Yes, he can get a good start and run with anyone. Even last year we saw that when things were going well. Can he get consistent wins? Sear and Kudenhoff for me in quite similar positions, provided Glenn can feel that way extra bit comfortable on the Yamaha this year.
Yeah, I see where you're going, but I think I would take Sear's consistency. You know, Kudenhoff on his day, like you said, is top three. You can get podiums, you can even get a race win, but I feel like he's more likely to throw a seventh or an eighth in, you know, every other, you know, race maybe, you know, if things aren't going well or whatever. And it definitely will be interesting. He's going into his second year at Yamaha now, and I think it's his final year in the contract, so contract time might come into it, but he definitely needs to improve from what he done on the Yamaha last year, because, you know, he effectively got signed to win an MXGP world title, or at least challenge for one. It didn't go the way they wanted last year, but he did show glimpses, and especially they ended the season quite well, I feel. So it will be interesting. We haven't seen him do a pre-season race yet. I feel like I think he's planning to do Hawkstone this weekend, so hopefully he has a good ride at Hawkstone and he can go into the season feeling confident and comfortable, because I feel like last year that's what maybe hindered him, because he didn't have a particularly great pre-season, and then he was probably going into the season with a little bit of unknown factor. But now he's got a year on the Yamaha underneath his belt. Hopefully that'll help him improve, and we can see the real Kudenhoff, let's say, that was seen on the Standing Construct KTM, which is very, very impressive. If he can get back to that level on the Yamaha, you certainly can't count them out.
I have 2 wild cards coming in here. Actually, maybe 3. 2 for certain. One's definitely a bit wild, but can he go up to that next level straight away in his debut season? Maxime Renault and Paul Jonas, for me, might be the 2 guys that can get on terms with those title contenders on a raw speed level. Give them a start with those guys, and they can generally, I think, this year will be able to run the pace. Maxime Renault is the guy to watch for me big time. He's just come out and won against Jeremy Sear in France in his debut. He was unbelievably good last year, not just speed-wise, but mentally. So yes, you might see him have a few ups and downs here this season in his rookie year, but if he gets away, gets the starts, keeps the confidence high, Renault is for me, is still climbing his way up to the top. He's a lot more potential. We know he's overcome injuries. We spoke to him. He feels like it's almost given perspective that he can just go out and put his all into this, because it's not going to last forever and you have to maximize your talent. And he knows he has the talent. He's got a world title. Maybe that takes the pressure off and he can go and enjoy this year. And he's already shown he has the raw speed.
Yeah, I think he can just go out and have fun this year, because at the end of the day, he's the third rider underneath that awning. He's during his rookie season, so for him, it's just go out, go and enjoy yourself, try and learn as much as you can from the best riders in the world, and see what happens. Really, even though he's MX2 world champion, I do feel like he's still an underrated rider. I really do. He's got the lot as far as I'm concerned. When it comes to tracks, he can pretty much ride it all. Very consistent. He's got a lot of speed, and I think his style will suit the 450. So, I really wouldn't be surprised if he's on the podium at Mallory Basin. I really wouldn't. He was very, very fast there in the MX2 last year. Won the GP, and I think it helps that if Fever and Hurlings aren't there, I think it'll help the rookies, even though it's still going to be very, very fast. The speed might not completely blow them away like it might have done in previous years. So I feel like that'll benefit them as well.
Could Renault end up the top Yamaha at the end of the year? For me, he should be on the level of Glenn and Sear, which is a very high level. And those two could be on up there with Prado and Geyser. I'm not going to be surprised to see Renault up there every week. Maybe the odd down week just because he's a rookie, but I think those three Yamaha guys could be having a lot of battles this year.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Renault was the best Yamaha at the end of the year either. I think it's between him and Sear, if I'm to be honest. I think if Sear can find that next step that we talked about and win races on a regular basis, I think it'll be him. If he can't, it's anyone's really. And we still can't rule Glenn out. He's still a world-class rider. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Certainly could be a lot of rivalry underneath that awning anyway.
Yeah, it could be a good team to watch in between races. And Renault, yeah, definitely got to keep an eye on. As you say, he's still somehow a wee bit under the radar, I feel. But if he comes out and runs in the top 5 in MXGP and gets podiums, I'm not going to be surprised at all. Another guy who can do that very much, and is maybe a wee bit in a similar position as Renault and being underrated after a World MX2 Championship, is Paul Jonas. We saw last year he didn't even race really the year before after a very serious injury. Moved to standing construct gas team as it was then, and he had amazing raw speed all year. A couple of big crashes, and I think he broke his ribs at the end of the year. But speed-wise, he had the speed of the top 5 on certain days. Really impressive, and with a year under his belt now, I think Jonas, he always seems to be not forgotten, but as you say, under the radar. He's never really given the big build-up, the big hype. But for me, him and Renault could be the guys that really get in amongst the top riders this year. Maybe even win a moto, especially at the start of this season. But definitely podium contenders.
Yeah, you definitely can't rule PJ out. Very, very fast rider. He's got more experience now, having a few years in the class. And I think last year would have done him the world of good. So, yeah, like you say, I don't really understand how he goes under the radar as well. Fantastic rider. Still feel like he has the occasional bad day on the hard pack, which is probably the area he needs to improve. But certainly in the sand and when he's feeling good in hard pack, and especially if he can get good starts, I think he'll not be too far away. Last year, the top 5 was just incredible, and he wasn't far away whatsoever. So don't be surprised if he's a regular podium guy at least.
And he and Brian Bogers stay with the same team, but they're, of course, the factory Husqvarna team this year. So standing construct, well-renowned, of course, formerly with Glenn Kudenhoff of getting the most out of the riders. We'll just bring Brian Bogers into this as well. He showed some really good pace. Sometimes actually surprised me at just how fast he was last year. He's had a couple of okay rides at the start of this preseason, but again, he could be one to watch coming in, because when he gets a decent start, he has pace that maybe people will be a wee bit surprised. And factory machinery, Bogers has it all there for him to perform this year, and a fast teammate to work off as well.
Yeah, he's certainly a good rider, and again, one that goes under the radar, I think, because when he's on it, he's very much on it, and he's capable of following the top 5. Certainly, if he gets out of the gate, I feel like the slick hard pack tracks are an area he needs to improve at. But when he's feeling good, he has the speed, so he's certainly going to be getting good results. I think everyone forgets that he missed the whole winter last year, so I think he's had the benefit of a full off season this year, which should only help him.
Right, the rookies then, alongside Maxime Renault, Jed Beaton. What do you see for him? Generally, to me, Jed's pretty consistent, fast and consistent, but going into MXGP, you could get a good start and get 8th and get a bad start the next week and get 16th, which doesn't look consistent, but your speed could be. So interesting to see how Jed fits into this class. And then you have the Reuben Fernandez, who we've already seen has speed at the end of last year and already at the start of this year. Can he continue that speed week in, week out, and most importantly, stay safe and not get injured? But Reuben, speed-wise, seems to have it. Jed, maybe a wee bit question mark. Can he? You would think going by MX2, he should have the potential to run the level Reuben is, but maybe he just needs a wee bit more adoption time. Reuben Fernandez doesn't seem to need any. And we've talked about wild cards. He could be the literal wild card at every round this year if he gets a good start, because he doesn't really care who's passing. He doesn't care what sort of pass he makes on people. He just wants to ride as hard as he can, as fast as he can, and get to the front as quick as he can. So if you're going to GP this year, keep your eye on Reuben Fernandez, because it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, just to start with Jet beaten, I mean, it's unknown territory, literally. It's his rookie season, and F&H Kawasaki have decided to sign him up, and it's their first year running an MXGP rider, so everything's going to be new for them as well. So they probably are going to have bad days, but I think that's to be expected. But honestly, there's so many good riders. It's really hard to predict how these guys are going to do, especially somebody like Jed, because he is with a new team in the 450 class. But I mean, he's had a pretty solid off season. I think his speed has been pretty good. So I think it's all about starts for guys like that. Like you said, 20th, you could ride as good to get 8th as you can to get 20th, but it's the starts that difference. And it's a valid point. That can happen pretty much every week in MXGP, especially when everyone's there fully fit and the depth is really impressive. So will be interesting. I feel like he'll be probably a 10 to 15 guy the majority of the time. And then, his good days where he gets a good start and he's feeling good on the bike, he'll probably be in that top 8 and around there. Fernandez, my goodness, I think, is it a Spanish thing? He reminds me quite a bit of Prado, the way he just doesn't give a crap. But yeah. I love his mentality, he's hopping on a 450 and he doesn't really care who he's riding against. He's just out there riding for himself. And, that's the way it should be, to be fair. So I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch, because if he gets out of that gate, he'll just ride his heart out. I feel like he maybe needs to slow down to go quicker, because you can tell in pre-season he's pushing very, very hard already. So he probably just needs a bit of time to adapt to racing the 450, because even though he done the last 3 GPs last year, and he's had 2 pre-season races this year, it's still only 5 races on the 450. So he's still going to have to get used to racing the bike. But I mean, I could see him standing on the podium for sure on his good days. He's got the speed, and I think he's got the mentality. So I just hope he can last the season and he can learn from all the other riders. And once he gets experience of racing MXGP, it could be an established name in the class in a few years' time.
Someone who had the speed last year but then got injured, and we'll sort of really waiting to see just how quickly he can come back from that injury. Kelvin Valandrin showed a lot of potential last year. If it hadn't been for that injury, I would have been really expecting a lot of gain coming in this year, but a wee bit unsure just how long it's going to take him to rediscover that form. Again, we mentioned before, and this could be a continued theme, start's quite important for Kelvin to get up under that front group, to show that speed in front of everyone, in front of the other teams and fans, and also to show the potential of the Gavin Van Venrooy Yamaha. You need the starts, but for me, Calvin's a guy that if he gets the starts, he has the talent to run 5, 6, 7 positions.
Yeah, very good rider. Make no mistake about it. And actually, I was worried about him coming in this season with that injury too, but I think he's been on the bike for quite a long time now, so he's probably had as good as off season as anybody really, because it's been short anyway. And obviously the guys that ended the season would have took a bit of a break. So I feel like he's had a pretty decent off season. And I know Gavin Van Venrooy, who have always ran a good setup for a privateer team, taking things a bit more seriously this year. They've moved workshops to Lommel, so they've had a lot of days in the Lommel sand and tracks in that area. So I think he actually should be fairly well prepared coming into the season. So it should be interesting. I think last year, if he hadn't got injured, even though he had bad luck here or there, I still don't think he would have been too far away from that top 10. So I feel like if he can get in the top 10 at the end of the championship on a privateer bike, not bad at all.
Yeah, but I would like to see him. If he can get consistent starts, I think it would be great for him, because he could really, really show what he can do. a lot of times last year he was having to come through the field, and the few times we did get to see him with a start, he was really, really impressive in terms of the pace he could run. His teammate, Arminas Jasikonis, we all know what happened. The Lithuanian with that awful crash, and he had glimpses of speed last year, but certainly to be expected, wasn't on the level he was previously when he was really kind of breaking through, kind of on that Pulse Jonas level of breaking through into that elite top 5 on raw speed. He's, of course, on the Gavin Van Venera Yamaha this year. How do you see that going for him? It's a new bike, new team. He has a lot to learn in terms of that. He's trying to build his way back up from what happened. So a lot going on for Arminas Jasikonis to kind of develop in a very short, as you mentioned, a shorter win normal, to get all his ducks in a row. And in a sense, maybe it could be a bit of a difficult start to the year, but hopefully we can see more and more glimpses of Jasikonis top form. But it might be a difficult start of the year for him.
I do feel like it's maybe a good thing. I know everyone wants a factory bike, but I feel like for him it might be a good thing that he hasn't got a factory bike, because after everything he's been through, it's a lot of pressure being a factory rider. And he's took a step down before. Don't forget, he was with Asamoto Honda in the past, and he actually done enough there to secure a factory ride after that in Husqvarna anyway. So I feel like going back to a non-factory bike, but still a good team, is probably a good decision from AJ's point of view. It'll help him hopefully rebuild his career. Now, looking at Lacapelle, it looks like he has serious work to do. I was expecting him to be a bit quicker than he was, but like we say, he probably hasn't had a long enough off-season to get used to the Yamaha and new machinery for him. So it will be interesting. I feel like the Sand GPs, I feel like even last year, the Sand GPs, the speed was absolutely fine. It just seemed to be hardpack. Obviously, growing up, hardpack was his weakness. And I'm not sure if after the injury and stuff, riding hardpack, it was a mental issue or what it was down to. But hopefully he can start improving hardpack again. But I feel like definitely in the sand, he's got the speed, and it's almost muscle memory probably because he's done so many laps in the sand, So, but yeah, hopefully he can have a good season and rebuild his career again.
Thomas Kjær Olsen, he's on the Digger Pro Cross KTM this year. Teammates with Liam Everts, which means Stefan Everts is going to be around a lot, which can only really help if you have an open mind. And Olsen, I feel, was okay last year, but I maybe expected a bit more raw speed. So far pre-season, of course, it's hard to tell. That raw speed doesn't seem to be there yet. The question mark for me for Thomas Kjær Olsen is, can he just find that extra bit of speed? Can he get the starts as well, which is a big thing for him? But we're seeing now Renault and Fernandez come in this year. They've already shown they've got the speed, and Olsen was racing with them and a lot of the time beating them in MX2. And he's got to feel a wee bit, those guys shouldn't be beating me this year, the rookies. A wee bit of urgency for him in his MXGP career. He's had his solid first season. Now, for me, he has to step it up a wee bit.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas Kjær Olsen is a very talented rider, and it's easy to forget. But in his MX2 days, I mean, it wasn't that long ago he was battling Dylan Ferrandis. Look at what Dylan Ferrandis went on to achieve. He was battling with Jeremy Sear. Look what Jeremy Sears went on to achieve. I do feel like his rookie season was okay. I mean, his championship position was probably dead on. It's just he never had those high moments that maybe we would have expected him to have.
Yeah.
Which is probably okay as a rookie, but this year I feel like he needs to start and have maybe a few more of those good moments in the class. I feel like with TKO it might be a mentality thing. I mean, a guy like Fernandez, even Renault, they come up and they're not scared to think they belong in the class, but
yeah, it's a good point.
Olsen's maybe a bit more respectful and understands how hard it is to make it in this sport, and maybe that hinders him slightly. But if he fully believes in himself, just focuses on himself, there's certainly a talent in there. I mean, talent-wise, he's probably not far off Paul Jonas. I know Paul Jonas did win an MX2 world title, but don't forget Olsen could have won one, but injury in his last year in the class ruled him out before it started, really. So definitely will be interesting, but hopefully this year he can try and get better starts, learn from the riders at the front, and get a couple more top 5 results and establishing himself as a regular top 10 rider again, which he sort of done last year, but hopefully some more top 5 moto finishes.
And Ben Watson, he's also coming into the second year of the series, and for Ben, he had a lot more flashes of speed than Thomas Kjær Olsen, yet he still got let go by Yamaha, and I think it's a case of he still got a factory ride with Kawasaki, a very good bike, proven bike. He's friends with Roman Fevre. So that harmony should work really well for Ben as well. He's had a good result there in France. Things look like they're starting to come together for Ben Watson. We know he's certain the ultra hard pack rounds have been a bit of a weakness for him. The Kawasaki's obviously in the hands of Reuben Fernandez can handle that stuff fine. So Ben, again, he'll probably want to improve, but I feel at least he has that raw speed he can take hold of from last year. He's already had a half-decent start to the year with his pre-season races, so I'll look for Ben to kind of keep the momentum going and maybe not take a big step, but maybe take another small step towards the front of MXGP, because for Ben, maybe a wee bit like Thomas Kirolson, they kind of go step by step. They don't just come in all guns blazing. Easy for me to say.
The one thing I would say is it's probably a pity for Ben that he could be the only factory KRT rider at the start of the season. I don't think that helps him. He's just went from a team where he was the third rider and not under an awful lot of pressure. And, he only lasted the season there. And all of a sudden he's going to be the only rider underneath that awning. So he's probably not used to that, being the only rider underneath the awning. He's used to looking around and seeing another couple of riders there. So it might take a bit of getting used to, and feel like that puts him under a bit more pressure maybe to start the season. And also he'll be starting it in his home country. So at least he'll get that out of the way early at least. But I do feel it's maybe slightly disappointing from Kawasaki that they haven't got a fill-in rider at the start of the season. That's another debate to have. But on Watson, yeah, I think if he can do more of the same as last year, but just improve those ultra hard pack rounds like you mentioned, I think it'll be dead on. And Watson's sort of rider, the more years he gets in a class, he tends to improve more with the more experience and getting used to racing a particular class. So hopefully that trend continues in MXGP. One thing I found interesting, obviously with Ice One taking over Kawasaki, the previous team had Jackie Vimond as the rider coach.
Mm-hmm.
Now Ice One have decided to draft in Kevin Strybus, who obviously has a lot of experience, but I find that quite interesting only because I know that both riders love Jackie.
Yeah,
and I'm sure Kevin,
him,
yeah, and I'm sure they spoke highly about him in the media too, which some riders don't always do when it comes to trainers. But it will be interesting to see how Kevin works with them, and who knows, maybe he can work with them and improve them even better. Obviously, he was a Grand Prix rider himself last year, and he's got lots of experience. So it'll be interesting to see how Strybus does as a team coach.
Yeah, that'll be a good thing to keep an eye on. I've seen Mark Deruva being pretty successful as that, but Jackie Vimond going back, I think he was France's first world champion actually, maybe 86 to 50 division, that could be wrong. But so he obviously has the credentials to do it, but he also has coaching credentials going all the way back to Yves Demaria and Jackie Vimond in the Oxbow days in the mid-90s. And he's obviously worked a lot for Reuben Fernandez, and from what Ben said of him, they had a good understanding as well. It was around then that Ben really came into his own as an MX2 factory rider. So, as you said, it is quite interesting that he isn't there, but maybe it was his choice, or really only speculating as to why that isn't. But Kevin, everyone seems to like Kevin Strybus. He's a nice person, and he's a lot of experience of the good and the bad of MXGP, recovering from injuries, dips in form, being one of the fastest there, winning races and being close to the front in title battles. So in terms of experience on the track and those riders knowing from a closer generation of what Kevin's done in his career, that should work as well. But definitely interesting. Jackie Vimond, probably one of the best trainers around in terms of rider coaches for sure.
Exactly, just another interesting element really, but it'll be interesting to see the job that Ice One do with running the factory KRT team. And obviously, Kimi Räikkönen hanging up the F1 boots. He'll probably be at more GP, so that'll be good as well, because I think that can only help the sport grow, which is what we need.
Yeah, F1 seemed to have only found out that he's been running the motocross team for 10 years, which is pretty embarrassing on their behalf, and typical of how motocross is the biggest hidden sport in the world. But going to Beta on an interesting duo, Alex Lupino, he's just signed and have the experience of Jeremy Van Hoorbeek. Van Hoorbeek again, actually, in Raiola looked pretty quick. I know that seemed to have an issue in the final moto, but Lupino and Van Hoorbeek should have good, fast, solid results for Beta, whose second year in the class. You'd expect the bike to be a wee bit better as well. All in all, to me, that's a pretty solid team and should provide good knowledge for going forward with Beta as well, to experienced riders who are fast. Lupino top 10 last year as well. Van Hoorbeek's certainly capable of that too. A good team to keep an eye on. And again, nice to see Beta in the mix in their second year, reinvesting again with another high-level rider. And it has to be good for the future for not just those two riders and the brand, but also riders coming up from MX2 needing rides, other riders in MXGP, because as the years go on, with those two testing the bike, you have to imagine the bike's only going to get better and better as well.
Absolutely. It's nice to see them. Obviously, it was great that they came into the sport last year, and it's probably understandable for the first year they only took one top rider. So it's nice to see them partner Van Hoorbeek with the Pinot now and really make a go of it and have two top riders now. And I do know Van Hoorbeek was testing a lot with the 2022 bike at the end of last year, and they had a lot of issues in sand last year, so it was actually quite good to see him look comfortable in the Riola sand, and that's rougher than pretty much every track they'll ride except for Lommel and Riola itself anyway. So I think that's positive. Tracks like Mantova, which are still rough but don't get quite that bumpy, they should hopefully be able to adapt okay to that moving forward, which is a positive. And it'll be interesting. One thing I would say is I think Lapino has done a really, really good job with non-privateer bikes in MXGP, whether it be Acer Motor Honda, Marchetti, where was he, and Gavin. Those three teams I think he's went to and helped improve. So it'll be nice. I fully expect him to improve better, and it'll be nice for him to leave his mark on a factory team now as well.
Yeah, I think he's definitely deserving of that ride with the performances he's put in recently. Mitch Evans, big year for him, although not of his own doing. After that terrible wrist injury that kept him out all of last year, he's coming in. He says it's helped him on a personal level develop and not just be motocross focused. So maybe pressure-wise, he won't feel it as much. But you take a year out of MXGP and it's not going to be easy, even though you have the Australian mentality is one of the best mentalities you can probably have to race to your potential, but not going to be easy for Mitch Evans. But we saw what he did in his rookie year, on his first year in GP and MX2. When you think it's tough, he seems to have the riding ability and B, the mentality to be able to push through and get to his potential again. So hopefully this wrist isn't too bad, because I think if the wrist isn't too bad, Evans' attitude and his talent, the way he's pretty smooth on a 450, being Australian, he's not really intimidated by anyone. I think if the wrist isn't too bad, I think he should be okay. And as the season goes on, we'll really start to see his potential again, because 2 years ago, he was one of the riders that you were really looking forward to in his second year, and that wrist injury kind of ruined everything. He actually thought his career was over. It was that bad at one point. Thankfully, he's back and he's getting another chance. I just hope the wrist allows him to show that potential again.
Very, very fortunate indeed. I know I had such a good potential for the future, and definitely a rider I really look forward to seeing. I mean, everyone talks about the Lawrence brothers, rightly so, very talented, but Evans, it's definitely on a 450, is a match made in heaven, yeah. I think. So it will be interesting. On the pre-season races, what I would say is his times in qualifying aren't actually that bad. So that suggests to me, once he gets more races under his belt, hopefully, he gets used to the race intensity. Because if you can do qualifying laps, you still have speed there. It's just a matter of, replicating that lap for the whole race. So I think he just needs races. So hopefully he can, but about the halfway mark, we can start to see him, battling that top 10, if not before that.
Yeah, he had a crash in the super final in Riola coming out of turn one, and luckily he wasn't injured, but that was why his result obviously wasn't in the top few positions. So that was one extra race he didn't get under his belt, but I think overall, considering where he's came from, he's not in too bad of a position. You obviously all more, but it's a long MXGP season and plenty of room for improvement. Hopefully he gets enough to be able to retain or get another competitive ride next year, and he can stay in MXGP and really show his potential, because I feel if he can get through this year and get the results and speed back again, he's going to be a rider to keep an eye on over the next few years, because he's still pretty young. Yeah,
exactly. That's one thing he has on his time. He has got time on his side, being so young.
Well said.
You caught on. So it will definitely be interesting, but he is under a bit of pressure there to keep that HRC Honda ride, and especially if Reuben Fernandez starts beating him on a regular occurrence, he'll be looking to promote himself to be a Geyser's teammate. So definitely one to keep an eye on.
And a few other, as we wrap the MXGP segment up, a few other riders to keep an eye on. Henry Jacoby, always fast, can never rule him out, especially when he gets a good start. Brent Van Donnet, quite similar. He's pretty consistent. He has speed. An interesting one is Davy Puchis. He's just tormented by injuries. We're yet to see where he really is on a 450. It's quite a big jump to go from being injured and missing sort of the end of your MX2 career to then jump on full time into probably the hardest class on the planet in motorcycle racing for me on the JWR Honda. Ivo Monticelli didn't have a good year last year. Injuries sort of scuppered his chances of showing his speed consistently on the Kawasaki. He's on the Jackie Martin Honda. He again, if he gets a good start, he's a big turn of speed. And then maybe the kind of exciting unknown is Nikolas Lapuchi. He was fantastic to watch on the 250 Fantic last year. He did have an injury a few weeks ago. I think it was a fractured shoulder blade, if I remember right, or something around there.
I think it's potentially his knee. I was actually going to ask you about Lapuchi. What do you make of him riding the 252 stroke in the MX2 class in Italy?
Yeah, that was pretty confusing, actually. I was actually going to ask you about that. I don't know if it was because his injury wasn't fully healed and he wanted to be out there because it was Italy and he just felt more comfortable on that bike, or whether Fantic wanted him to try and win that specific title, but definitely a bit confusing. He was supposed to be on the 450 Fantic coming into MXGP.
Well, he is. That's why it's very confusing.
Why he was riding 250. Now, of course, if he really wants, he can still ride a 250 two-stroke in MXGP, but that might be a bit of a disadvantage, although the way Tundell was riding. I don't know. He was going very well. But Lapuchi definitely, if he gets fit and healthy, gets a start, he isn't afraid to hang it out, plenty of style over the jumps, and maybe a wee bit like Reuben Fernandez. Could be one to watch and pretty exciting. Tom Cock has been quietly effective in MXGP last year. He could be another solid addition this year. Alberto Ferrado, we've said it before, but he needs good starts. Definitely has a lot of pace, definitely has a lot of talent in the SM Action Racing team. But again, Alberto Ferrado, does he get the starts? It could be a Fredrickson situation in MX2 on the Honda. Ferrado definitely has a lot of talent on a bike, though, and we saw when he does get away last year, when he's fit and healthy, he has a lot of speed. I think it was a sixth he got in the moto. So definitely top 10 capabilities for him. Michele Servalin, it's going to be tough for him, but again, another good rider. Yuri Tixier wasn't happy with how he rode in France there in La Capelle, but again, another rider with talent, former world champion. He's always thereabouts whenever it comes to trying to get points. Lorenzo Lucercio, for me, he impressed quite a lot last year. He did have a big injury then at the end of the year he was struggling with, but again, he's capable of getting points. And all these guys, they're always needing stars to try and do that and to try and force their way closer to the top 10. But there's still that depth there. We might be missing Caroli, but we've got the rookies coming in. Fev and Herning is going to be back, and we'll have that sort of depth outside the top 20, you must say, of riders that are capable of getting the top 20. But whenever you have 30 guys that level, not everyone can do it. So always exciting battles deep in this MXGP field. And I actually forgot Valentin Guillot as well. He's another one who always has glimmers of speed too.
Alvin Osland as well.
And Osland, yeah, former MX2 rider. So those sort of riders, it's very deep, and it can't be easy if you're neck and neck with a guy outside the points and you're still having to ride as hard as you can, hoping that you'll maybe just be able to scrape a point or two. But that's MXGP for you in this generation.
Exactly. Certainly not easy. It's very stacked. I mean, look, even just scrolling through the entry list, you're like, every name, he's good.
Yes,
we've got Benoit Paturel as well, actually, and Brulikoff as well.
Paturel, he showed lots of potential last year times when he was actually healthy. Another guy who could get in amongst that top 10, but I feel like you're saying that for maybe 20 guys or more. So
that's the problem.
Starts are going to be pretty crucial. Right, that's MXGP, but MX2 this year could be really, really exciting. We've seen Jago Gertz start the preseason really well, and he's been second the last 2 years. And Kaida Wolf, for me, let's start with Kaida Wolf. He just won very impressively in France. For me, his talent is extremely high, probably on a Jet Lawrence level. He could be the Jet Lawrence of Holland, or else he could be the Jeffrey Hurlings again of Holland. We're not quite sure what he is, but he's certainly Kaida Wolf. And the ability he has on a bike, he had it in the sand. He's already won races. It looks like going by France's hardpack has maybe come up. We actually saw that with Hurlings. Jeffrey was 15, 16. He could win in straight away, no problem in the sand, but it took him maybe a season of Grand Prix motocross to get that hardpack level up to where he could win there. And it looks, although it's maybe a bit early, but it looks like Kaida Wolf has at least improved. To what level, it remains to be seen. Tom Vialle's excellent in hardpack, but Tom Vialle's a bit of a slower start to the preseason. So Kaida Wolf looks like he's coming out firing. Jago Gertz looks like he's coming out firing. Those two could be really good to watch at Matterley Basin. And you have Rowan van den Moustek moving on to the Rockstar Husqvarna. That team looks pretty impressive already going to pre-season, and that's just 3 names already. We haven't even got to Tom Vialle yet.
Yeah, I have to say, I've rated Kaida Wolf very, very highly, but even I was surprised at him going 1-1-1 at La Capelle. Unbelievable start to the season, and the fact he's doing that in hard pack. If this guy gets confidence, you just never know. A big talent. You know, it's the first time he hasn't been a rookie in a class since the '85. Mm-hmm. It's easily forgotten, but he spent a year in the MX125 class, a year in the MX. Yeah, and yeah, such a quick progression. Recently, just turned 17. So I just hope he can stay injury free, because if he can, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and especially starting the season like that. He'll be going in with a lot of confidence now, so it's going to be great. And Rowan van den Moustek, I'm very, very intrigued to see. Unlike the Wolf, he's kind of running out of time in MX2. I think he's got 2 years left. So, and everyone, you know, after winning the MX250 title, he hasn't really showed his true potential in MX2 yet, I would say. But he's got no excuses now, because he's got the factory Husqvarna. Hopefully he can get out of the gate, because I think that's been his biggest weakness in MX2. If he can get out of the gate, he has the speed and the talent. So don't be surprised to see this guy get race wins under his belt as well.
No, I think he's quite an intriguing watch coming into the season, especially early on. Can he get out of the gate better? Can he maybe get a race winning and get that extra bit of confidence going? He's actually admitted that he doesn't really have maybe the ego you need to be able to win. He kind of doubts himself a wee bit too much. Will that change getting onto this new bike? Will that be something that kind of is that last piece of the puzzle for him? Because, as you say, I remember watching him when he was 15, 16 in the MX250, and even doing sort of guest appearances on MX2, and talent-wise, he's definitely got it.
Yeah, I feel like he's very intriguing, because I feel like people don't realise how good he actually is. So if he did start winning GPs, I feel like everyone would be surprised. But I certainly wouldn't be, because I've always thought he's had the talent. But the problem is time's ticking now, because he stayed in the MX250 so long, and you know he hasn't had a great couple of years. Obviously, last year he was actually in a good position championship wise, but then a few bike issues and then an injury followed, so he never really got a fair crack at the whip last year either. But hopefully this year he can stay injury free, and it's definitely going to be interesting having 2 Dutch guys at the Husqvarna team. You know, especially if things start getting tense out on track. It could be a little rivalry maybe forms there, but it'll certainly be interesting.
Right, let's talk Tom Vialle. Guy, probably still the guy to beat, although Jago Gertz was, of course, second overall last year, and is by all accounts coming a lot of motivation, a lot of focus to be world champion this year. But Tom Vialle probably still just edges, because he has the experience of being world champion, as the guy to beat. But going by the pre-season results in France, is the door open at the start of this season for a Jago Gertz, for a Kaida Wolf to get an early GP win in there, Mantova, wherever, and really start to build their platform, their self-belief, and their points accumulation to challenge Vialle for this title?
I think the door is open at the start of the season, yes, only because I think Vialle's only had 2 or 3 weeks back on the bike. So he's probably not going to be ready, fully ready for the first GP. He would probably like it like last year, a late start to the season, and then he'd be fully ready. But that's not going to be the case this year. But I think that makes it definitely more exciting for the fans. It could open the door to like Gertz, the Wolf, Van den Moustek. Don't be surprised if somebody comes out and surprises either. So it's certainly going to be really interesting. I do feel like by the time it gets to maybe Argentina or the 4th round, I think Tom Vialle will be fully ready to go then, because there's gaps between the first couple of rounds, which should help him, put the laps in during the weeks and get back up to speed quickly. So I think the door is opened down at the start of the season. But if Tom Vialle does come out and win the first round, he'll be feeling amazing, because he'll know at the back of his head that he's not even really ready yet. It's certainly an interesting element there. But I think Jago Gertz, I think he won the first round at Matterley a couple of seasons ago. and he was very, very impressive. So, and he looks good in pre-season as well. So I think going into it, those four are probably going to be the four that could be at the front, but only based on one pre-season race, So don't be surprised if somebody comes out of the blue and runs at the front either. I mean, only a couple of years ago, Mikael Harap got a podium at Mallory Basin, so anything can happen.
Yeah, but with Iago, don't forget he injured his knee at the start of last year, so he didn't come in at full tilt.
Yeah.
This year, it looks like he's maybe coming in on his best level ever. And for Iago, the biggest issue was Tom Vialle starts. If Iago can get those starts consistently, even if it's second behind Tom Vialle, Kyle Wolf as well, starts weren't always amazing last year. He's growing as well in terms of stature. So again, for him, even if he is really fast, it's not too many faster than Tom Vialle. When Tom Vialle gets a whole shot and is fully healthy, those two, if they want to win a title, their starts are going to have to be really good as well, even if they have the pace. Moving on then, Thibaut Beniston, an impressive rookie last year. He's going to miss. He's still coming back from injury. He's unfortunately going to miss the first round, maybe the first two, which is a bit of a blow for him because he was really impressive last year. Iago Gert's teammate, obviously. But Mattia Guadagnini, also extremely impressive last year. He might be the guy that also is in that World Championship battle. Certainly, from what he did last year, maybe he didn't have the pressure. This year, he's going to have more pressure and expectation on the gas. How does he handle that? And can he win races more consistently? Because he's a lovely style in the bike. He's really loose. His personality seems pretty loose and happy. Can he maintain that if the pressure mounts whenever he's going for a title? And can he increase the speed, or will it become a sort of mental game trying to go for this World Championship?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one. I mean, he was a revelation last season, make no mistake about it. So I think we can probably expect something similar this year. Although I have to say, up until that super final motor at Riola, wasn't having a great pre-season. I know he did have bad starts and stuff, but even his speed wasn't overly that great. But thankfully, at the super final at Riola, that was more like last year, his speed from last year. So he'll be feeling good now heading into the season. Can he win the title? Oh, difficult one. I wouldn't be overly surprised, but I don't think he goes in as one of the favourites.
Do you not put him in that make it 4-5 with Gertz?
Oh yeah, I'd put him within that,
Moustek,
but I still think Gertz and Vialle, I still think it's between them for the championship, realistically. And then Guarnini is in that next group. But, as we've seen last year, Vialle and Gertz had their own issues and that left the door open, so that could easily happen again this year. And if it does, there's 3 or 4 guys that could take advantage.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing. What guys are able to step up this year? Will the Wolf take a leap and just be a legitimate title contender week in, week out, even on the hard pack, or will he still be a wee bit win races, have a couple of bad days? I think that somewhat applies to Guadagnini as well. These young guys, they're getting more experience. They're going to get better, but it's this year, the year where they can really challenge Gertz, who's coming in healthy, and Tom Vialle week in, week out. Another rider who we'll have to see if he can make the leap is Simon Langenfelder.
Yeah.
Last year was maybe slightly disappointing, and a team manager maybe alluded to the fact that Simon didn't maybe do all the right things at all the right times to maximize his talent. I think he will be this year because he's in the Decarly team. He's got a massive opportunity. I think we've seen the last few years his talent, what he was doing at 15 and 16. Talent isn't an issue at all. He's got Carolia helping him. He's got the Decarly team. Obviously, they've got the experience, but they've also have racing experience themselves. He's everything he needs in his corner, riding with Jorge Prado. It's kind of what level is Simon Langenfelder going to get to, and we're going to find out this year if he wants to be a world title contender, which I think his talent could lead him to. I expect him to step up this year. He's got a good bike. He should get great starts. And if he's got the fitness and he starts to get the confidence going, I'm kind of expecting Langenfelder to be the guy that emerges from the pack and at times maybe joins that 4 or 5 I've just been talking about on speed.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Langenfelder does this year what Guadagnini done last year. Yeah, I really rate Langenfelder. I really do. And he looks fantastic in pre-season as well. To be honest, I thought he had a good season last year. I mean, it was his first full season in the MX2 World Championship. He did maybe have a bit of a dip, but whenever you're only used to racing European Championship, you're probably going to have a dip because you're not used to the 20 GPs in 1 year, and it's hard to have that peak fitness you need whenever you're not used to it. And obviously his rookie season was cut short due to injury. So last year was really his rookie season. So I think he ended up 10th in the championship. So I felt that was strong. And now with the Carly behind him, I really do think he'll take it up another level. And I think he can be a consistent top 5 guy, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm expecting. We saw last year he was there at times, but maybe just the end of the races, things seemed to come undone for him. He was under pressure, come through the pack, but the ability was still there to see last year. Maybe less flash than maybe I expected, but as you say, 20-round championship, he's still very young. You kind of have to go through that and learn, and right now he's in the best place to learn and really develop his talent, so definitely one to watch on. You mentioned Mikael Harrop there. He is now with Steve Dixon. In terms of raw speed, Harrop's always had that. Last year was maybe a step not back, but in terms of consistency, definitely worked for him. Now he has to kind of harness that speed with that consistency this year for me. Hopefully he can get the starts, because last year he was always coming from the back a lot. But probably a good move for both Steve Dixon and Mikael Harrop. Definitely a lot of potential there, a lot of speed there. And if he can get the starts, and he loves Matterley Basin, so we've seen what he's done there in the past. So that could be a good combination to kick off the year, and could really set things on a good path for him in 2022.
Certainly a very, very talented rider. There's no doubt about it. Since making the move up to MX2, injuries. So even though last year maybe it didn't look like an amazing season for Mikael Harrop, I think it's positive. He just was able to, stay injury free the whole season. I think that's really what he needed to do last year. And now hopefully he can build on that. Like you say, starts. I'm not sure if it was him or the bike, but I think we're probably going to find out this year, because Steve Dixon, certainly no issue with the speed of that bike, and it should hopefully get him better starts. If he gets bad starts this year, then possibly maybe it's down to the rider, but I'm expecting him to get good starts on that bike, and I'm expecting him to run at the front regularly, actually. And I think he's still only 20, so he's still got 3 years left in this class, believe it or not. Feels like he's been around for years.
Yeah, he's younger than you think he is.
Still plenty of potential there for sure. I'm one to keep an eye on, because I feel like because last year he maybe didn't have an amazing results, I feel like people maybe forget how talented he actually is.
Right, talking of potential and talent, Liam Everts, debut season in MX2 on the Diga Pro Cross KTM. It's hard to know where quite to put Liam, because I think talent-wise he definitely has it, but he seems to be a guy that kind of needs to feel his way in and gain the confidence. Definitely, obviously, with the name, he's going to have a lot of focus on him. Maybe a wee bit unfairly. It's his debut season. He has to learn. He has to learn the pace. As you mentioned earlier, it's 20 rounds, and we actually should have mentioned this in the MXGP preview as well. 2-day, back to 2-day events again. So that's going to take an extra level of fitness and concentration over the 2 days. He's not quite used to that, obviously, at GP level. He's also young, so some of these younger riders might find that pretty daunting, especially halfway through the season, whenever the bodies are tired without a big winter break. And the season is quite condensed this year, because we're ending the year early to accommodate America and the Motos of Nations, amazingly. But Everts, I think, will be good this year. I think if he starts, or a wee bit hit and miss for him, if he gets the starts, I think his improvement will rise, because I think he has the talent that when he gets away, he's able to lock into that pace. And from there, he'll get more confidence and more belief in his ability. So if Liam can get good starts early in the year, I think that'll really help him. You don't really want to see him get bad starts over and over again and then kind of have to just come through. But all eyes are going to be on Liam Everts for sure. And I think he has the talent to overcome that pressure, as it were. He definitely has the technique, probably pretty close to Jorge Prado, who is probably pretty close to how Stefan Everts rode. So there's a style there that's coming through, and Everts with that technique, he certainly has the potential to learn year on year and gain speed without becoming risky and dangerous for his own health, really. So I think that will keep him in good stead as he pretty much learns the ropes. You mentioned Guy de Wilp didn't have a lot of experience. He's coming in year after year, and Liam's kind of done the same thing. I think now is his time to kind of find his feet and grow. Hopefully this year that he won't feel that pressure, and he'll be allowed time to grow and really work into the ability that he has.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do think he'll get better as the season goes on. So maybe if the first couple of rounds don't go to plan, I don't think we should hit the panic button. Because out of all the top MX250 riders to move up, I feel like he was the rider that maybe could have benefited from staying in the MX250. But obviously, when you get an MX2 team call, you're going to take the opportunity to race MX2 GP. So I completely understand why they made that decision. But I feel like maybe the start of the season around 15th, 10 to 15 maybe, and then I feel you'll see him grow. Especially when it hits whenever there's GPs back on back. Feel like you'll see him grow and grow and grow, and then by the end of the season, I think he has what it takes to be a consistent top 10 rider. And then he'll obviously hopefully have the good days where he's battling with the top 5. I think, but yeah, he's one of the younger riders in the class, so don't think there's too much pressure on him to perform. He just wants the aim for him should just be to get better this year and get a year's GP experience under his belt, really.
Yeah, I think that's what he needs, and I guess with that name, he's always going to have the pressure. But as I say, if he can take this as almost a free year, a learning year, I think we'll see a lot of development with Liam, especially if he can get the starts, because at certain tracks last year in the MX2, especially towards the end of the year, you could really see his talent starting to be fulfilled. Talking of talent and fulfillment, Conrad Muse, not the best start to the year with the split from Hitachi KTM. He still announced his full plans. It looks like he will be doing the MX2 season, but I think this is his last year in the class. Speed, everyone knows Conrad has incredible speed, world-class speed. If he could turn his British Championship speed into MX2 speed, he's probably a top 5 guy, and you're probably adding him into the mix with Kai de Wolf, Ron van de Moustek, and it really should be Conrad Muse. But again, it's like rolling the dice a wee bit with Conrad, what Conrad are we going to get, and he is always good at Matterley Basin, at least usually. Hopefully you can get off to a good start to the season. That can help his confidence, but it's certainly not the ideal way to start the season with your plans, shall we say, slightly not ideal coming into the year.
Slightly up in the air. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one with Conrad Muse, but it does seem like he's going to be running his own setup. So looking at his Instagram, it looks like he's back working with Justin Marsh, who of course he's worked with during his youth days, actually. So that's a positive, I think. Although having said that, he was working with Stephen Sword, who I think's good as well. So it remains to be seen if that'll make a huge difference. But maybe if he's just doing his own thing, that'll help take the pressure. Who knows with Conrad? I think it just depends what mood he's in when he turns up the track. But it'll certainly, we all know he has a speed, and that's why it's quite frustrating. But we're talking about Reuben van de Moustek, crunch time for him. It's certainly crunch time for Conrad Muse. If he doesn't perform well this year, where's the MXGP contract going to come from? So certainly has to perform this year. His career.
He's definitely a pressure.
For the talent that he has got, that he still hasn't been on the MX2 GP podium, but hopefully that'll come this year.
Yeah, and then Roger McGee's team that Conrad used to ride for is this year Isaac Gifting, which I think is a pretty strong and solid signing. Gifting can certainly turn some heads with his speed, and a podium mightn't be out of the reach for him either, certainly top 5s. But maybe the more intriguing in a way was Kai Karsmakers, a good, strong, young, talented rider, but he was an EMX 135 last year, and that's quite the jump to MX2. He certainly has talent, and Roger is usually good at getting riders to create a scenario where they're able to get the most out of their ability and maybe ride more pressure free than on a big factory team. So Kai could be in a good place, but it's a big jump in 1 year.
I'm looking forward to seeing Isaac Gifting. Obviously coming into the season last year, picked up a knee injury just days before the opening round. So hopefully that doesn't happen this year, although he has got COVID at the moment, and that's why he didn't ride in France. So hopefully he's all good for Matterley Basin, because I think he has got a lot of potential if he can just stay injury free. But injuries have hindered Gifting over the years. But all being well, he can last the season this year, and I think we could see him on the podium. He's definitely got a lot of speed, and he's a great rider to watch. Certainly, you can tell he's given it everything he has. Yeah, just on Kai Karsmakers. I think he was actually planning on running his own team in the EMX 250 Championship, but from his point of view, whenever you get an opportunity to ride for an MX2 GP team like Hitachi, you can't exactly turn it down. So I can completely understand why he took it. And also with the Conrad Muse news coming out just before the start of the season, there wasn't a lot of options for Hitachi. I think they did try for Joe Ritchie, but Joe Ritchie opted to go to Riley Yamaha to race the MX 250, so it didn't leave them with an awful lot of options. So in that respect, Kai Karsmakers probably did make the most sense. It's obviously going to be a really big jump up, but similar to Everts for Kai. It's just going to be trying to last the full season. Don't ride above your head. Just take whatever comes and try and learn from the best riders in the world. There's no doubt that Kai Kashmakers has a lot of talent, but this last few years injuries haven't been good for him. And obviously that was the positive of 2021, that he was able to stay injury free. So hopefully he can last another season injury free, and we can see him hopefully live up to his potential that he once showed, because he was unbelievable on the 65 and 85.
At that level, he was just a winning machine. So I think, obviously you said the potential is there. It's just getting experience and confidence again. So no real pressure for him this year. It's certainly a learning year. Kevin Horgmo back in MX2. He's on the F&H Kawasaki team, and it's going to be quite interesting to see how he and Mikael Harrop match up. Harrop off that team, but Horgmo in, and they might have some decent battles this year. Both pretty quick, but both sometimes can end up on the ground.
It'll certainly be interesting. I don't think Mark de Rover will be too happy if Harrop beats Horgmo. So rule number one for Horgmo will be beat Harrop, and then anything after that's a bonus. Yeah, Horgmo's obviously a really good rider, and he has good speed. It's just that F&H Kawasaki last year, their riders couldn't buy a good start. So I feel like that's key for Horgmo. I think he's maybe a little bit lighter than the three riders they had last year, so that might help him get out of the gate. But if he can get good starts, definitely feel like he can be a consistent top 10 rider, and then on his good days push to get into that top 5. Don't think that's unrealistic, but you know, if he's getting starts like the F&H guys had last year, it's hard to come from 15th to 20th to get into the top 10. It's certainly not easy.
Yeah, and Andrea Adamo, he impressed last year. He was fast again there in the pre-season. He's another guy, tends to go under the radar, but the Italian, I'm not sure where he'll end up really, but you'd expect kind of more top 10s for him. Certainly seems to be getting faster every year. Taylor Hamel, he's back. He was pretty bad injury last year, actually just when he was starting to look pretty good in GP terms and the speed. He'd actually impressed initially. So it's nice to see him getting another chance. Anyone else there that really sticks out that could maybe potentially do something pretty exciting this year? Stephen Rubini is always a bit of a chance as well.
Yeah, two riders I was going to mention is Bastian Bodam. Yeah, very intrigued to see him. He's a good rider. He is a good rider. Last year was his rookie year, and obviously he hasn't got the benefit of a factory bike. So, you know, it wasn't that long ago he was battling, you know, Thibaut Benistant and the MX250, but it's difficult when you haven't got a factory bike, especially an MX2, I feel. So hopefully he can get some top 10 results and then try and secure maybe a factory bike for 2023. That should probably be his goal. And like you said, Stephen Rubini, it's his last year in the MX2 World Championships, the same as Conrad Muse actually. So again, I think Stephen Rubini is actually a very good rider, but last year he was riding the whole year injured when he was there. So it's been nice that he's had a full off season coming into this year, and it wouldn't surprise me actually if he can get some top 5 results in hardpack. I feel like people forget how good he is, and hopefully this change to the new SR Honda team will do him the world of good, where he'll also have Emil Wackman underneath that awning, which will be an interesting one. It'll be his rookie season in the MX2 GPs as well.
Right, that's both previews wrapped up. Now it's decision time. Who is your MXGP and MX2 champion?
MXGP, Jorge Prado. MX2, I want to say Gertz for MX2, but it's gonna come down to if he can just stay on the bike enough, or will he crash like he did in 2019 when it was him and Vialle? Sorry, 2020. I'll go Gertz. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Who are you going for?
MXGP. I had been thinking Prado once.
So you're going to
Erlings got injured, but just watching Geiger and more importantly the starts in the pre-season, I might just edge Geiger just due to the experience, and if the Honda's going to start like that all year. But Prado, I think if he wins it, I won't be surprised at all, because I think he's going to go to his best level ever this year, and it might be a question of if Geiger can stay fit to keep challenging him. And also Jeremy Sear, I think, isn't going to be far away either. But I think Tim Geiger, Edge and Jorge Prado possibly, unless Jeffrey Hurlings is back by round 2 and turns into a winning machine. And also Reuben Fernandez, again, only because he's coming in injured as well. It could be hard for him to make up those points. MX2, it's hard to go against Tom Vialle for me. just because he's proven under pressure and he's proven on his starts two aspects that Iago, although he has the speed, he still has to prove to me that he can execute under pressure and he can get starts under pressure and beat Vialle when he really needs to beat him. I don't think in terms of talent, Iago is any less than Vialle. Actually, I think they're two of the nicest riders to watch. You'll see anywhere riding a bike, but just for the reason that Vialle has proven more mentally and definitely on the starts, I think I'm going to give him the edge, even if he maybe isn't coming into the season quite on form. But I really, really hope Iago Gertz can figure out the starts and we can really see his full potential. It sounds like we might just get to see the best Iago Gertz we've seen so far. And I think kind of Wolf might kind of be thereabouts all year. Maybe just the experience he doesn't have yet, but I look for him to be pretty special, but it's still hard to go against Tom Vialle for me.
Yeah, I was 50-50 on Vialle and Gertz. I feel like if Gertz, in 2020, he definitely had the speed. He just bent it too often. So if he can cut that out, I feel like he'll not be far away. But yeah, it's hard to look past Vialle just because he gets starts 9 times out of 10, which is a big thing. But yeah, well, at least we're both different. So that's
probably all wrong and
all wrong.
All that as per
it'll be
usual.
Hurlings and the Wolf now. If they both win, the
Dutch.
Dutchies will be they'll be having a party before they even get the red bud.
And that's not even with Kudenhoff. He dominated red bud the year after, but we're not doing a Motocross of Nations preview. This has went on long enough. We'll start talking about Norway or something in Spain.
Hi, Norway's talent's unbelievable.
Yeah, we're not talking about that now. That's it. That's the preview done. No Motocross of Nations preview yet. It's only February. GP preview done. Predictions done. So that's probably all wrong. Apologies to any riders predicted to do well. And Andy, I'll speak to you again soon and see you at Hawkstone and the British GP for round 1 of the MXGP World Championship. Can't wait.
Can't wait myself. Bring it on.
Bye-bye.